A mixture of the electric traction of the trams and the manoeuvrability of the motorbus, trolleybuses enjoyed a relatively brief life in the United Kingdom. Although many successful trolleybus systems exist in European cities and towns. The trolleybus can be dated back as far as 1882 to a small Berlin suburb, where an experimental display of this type of transport continued until the 13th of June 1882. Bradford and Leeds were the first British cities to offer trolleybuses that could carry passengers in 1911. It wasn't until 1972 that Bradford ceased operating them. Altogether, 50 trolleybus routes operated in Britain, the largest being in London. We'll start our look at classic trolleybuses in Bradford. In the pioneering days of 1911, trolleybuses were known as the trackless tram. And whilst neighbouring Leeds decided to standardise on the conventional tram, with its overhead power wires and a track like a train, Bradford saw a future for this crossbreed vehicle. Indeed, the fleet of trolleybuses in the city eventually totalled over 200. This is one of around 19 Bradford trolleybuses which survived into preservation, helped no doubt by the late closure of the Bradford system in 1972. It is Bradford trolleybus number 735, registration number DKY 735. It is a Carrier W type trolleybus, with a body by Bury-based manufacturers, East Lancashire coach builders. (735) is seen at the Black Country Living Museum in Dudley. Just visible at the top of the hill at the Black Country Living Museum is Bradford 792. (792) is another Carrier W type trolleybus, just like 735. Bradford had a large fleet of Carrier trolleybuses, in a relationship which developed when the Carrier factory was based at the nearby town of Huddersfield, where it was until 1934. Again, the bodywork is by East Lancashire Coach Builders, a company still in operation today. The body could seat 70 passengers, with 31 on the lower deck and 39 on the upper, all finished in Bradford's distinctive deep blue colours. (792) is privately owned and is usually based at the Trolleybus Museum at Sandtoft, more of which later. The company of Carrier Motors became part of the Rootes Group in 1934, with production transferring to Luton. After successive takeovers, Rootes became part of Chrysler Europe by 1970, and the last use of the Carrier name was shortly after that. Trolleybuses were renowned for moving about a bit between different operators, and Bradford Trolleybus 834 is such a vehicle. It started life in 1949 with Darlington Corporation as their number 72, but within a matter of years was sold to Doncaster Corporation in 1952 to become their 382. In 1958, it was sold again to Bradford City Transport. In 1962, Bradford removed the original East Lancashire body to allow a new, more modern one to be fitted, again by East Lancashire. The trolleybus was finally withdrawn from service in 1971 and was sold to the Bradford Trolleybus Association for preservation in October of that year. Moving to the Midlands, and the town of Walsall was one of only 3 systems in the West Midlands, the others being Wolverhampton and Birmingham. (862) was delivered new to Walsall Corporation in 1955 and is a Sunbeam F4A trolleybus chassis. This batch of trolleybuses made history in the UK by being the first 30-foot long 2-axle double-deck public service vehicles to operate on British roads. Although 862 is known to have operated in Walsall before the required permission had been granted by Parliament. It carries a Willowbrook body of very lightweight design, such that unladen the vehicle weighs just over 7 tons. Its design was the idea of the general manager of Walsall, the late Mr. R. Edgley Cox. In 1970, when Walsall Corporation was absorbed into the West Midlands Passenger Transport Executive, trolleybus operations ceased in the town. And 862 was one of a number of the fleet to be earmarked for preservation. It joined ex-Wolverhampton trolleybus 433 at the Black Country Living Museum. To the South Yorkshire town of Doncaster, a borough which had trolleybuses in operation for over 35 years, ending on the 14th of December 1963. The very last trolleybus to run on that December night was this one, 375, CDT 636, which is now the oldest Doncaster bus in existence. Delivered in July 1945 as fleet number 75, the vehicle is a Carrier W trolleybus, fitted with a 56-seat Park Royal bodywork to relaxed utility specification. This meaning that it had upholstered seats and a slightly less austere outline than the similar 69 to 71, which were delivered in the previous year. In their early days, the utility trolleybuses spent much of their time on the Wheatley Hills and Hexthorpe routes, where they replaced elderly carrier cloughs. In the general renumbering of the trolleybus fleet in April 1948, 75 became 375. And in March 1955, it received a new and elegant 62-seat body at Rose Crossgate Works. After withdrawal, 375 was donated to the Doncaster Omnibus and Light Railway Society for preservation, and it eventually ended up at the newly opened Santoff Transport Centre. Hopefully in the not too far future, the oldest Doncaster bus and the only remaining original Doncaster trolleybus will be motoring around the Santoff track once again. The capital was quite late in starting trolleybus operation, with the official start date being the 16th of May 1931. Seen here at London's Transport Museum in Covent Garden is London Transport's trolleybus number 1253. It is a K2 class trolleybus and is a typical London Transport design of the 1930s. The body and chassis were built in 1939 by Leyland Motors in Lancashire. It has a Metropolitan Vickers motor and English electric controllers. Trolleybus 1253 was delivered from Leyland Motors in March 1939, and it entered service from Hackney Depot, replacing trams on routes in northeast London. 1253 was transferred to Wood Green Depot in 1959 and withdrawn from service completely in April 1961. Despite its late start, the huge trolleybus network was designed and built in less than 10 years. The system started under the London United Tramways Company, who opened the first routes in the southwest suburbs in 1931. Soon after, London Transport took over. In 1933, they announced a rolling programme to introduce trolleybuses across the capital. Following the Second World War, London Transport needed new trolleybuses to replace ageing examples and the 15 trolleybuses destroyed in the war. So, an order for 77 British United Traction trolleybuses was placed in 1946. These had bodies by Birmingham-based manufacturer Metro Camel Wayman. These were known as the Q1s, and they started to be delivered in January 1948. This example, 1812, arrived in September 1948. it has been restored to the typical condition of a 1950s London Transport trolleybus. The Q1s took over Kingston area routes 601 to 605 after a thorough testing period. Following the success of the first 77 Q1 trolleybuses, London Transport ordered another 50 to replace the B2 type trolleybuses and subsequently convert Fulwell and Isleworth depots entirely to Q1 operation. Some Q1s also became resident at Hanwell Depot, following reductions on the network. In 1954, London Transport announced it was their intention to convert all trolleybus routes to motorbus operation from the late 1950s. But as this excluded all trolleybus routes operated from the Fulwell and Isleworth depots, London Transport's intention was to keep the Q1s in operation until the late 1960s. However, that changed in 1960 when Spanish trolleybus operators held talks with London Transport regarding the possible sale of the Q1s. It was soon agreed that 125 Q1s were to be sold to Spain. So, on the 24th of February 1961, 1812, along with sister vehicles 1775, 1781, 1810, 1821 and 1829 were loaded onto a ship bound for Santander in Spain. The Q1s were subsequently withdrawn in 1974 and stored in Santander. After a lengthy process, the British Trolleybus Society bought 1812 and the vehicle was returned back to England at Southampton Docks on Sunday the 19th of June 1977. After 19 years at the Santoff Transport Centre, the job of restoring 1812 began, and the vehicle ran in service on British soil for the first time in 40 years in 2001. 1812 has outlived the trolleybus system it was designed for, with the plug finally being pulled on London's trolleybus network on the 8th of May 1962. A system lasting just over 5 years longer was Glasgow. And out of a fairly substantial fleet of 194 trolleybuses, only 10 were single-deckers. And TBS 13 is one of those 10. It is a British United Traction trolleybus with a body by Burlingham. The 10 single-deckers operated the 108 service from Shield Hall to Mount Florida between 1958 and 1967, when the city's trolleybuses were all withdrawn. Their 34-foot 6-inch length, which is over 10.5 metres, was longer than the legal limit at the time, and special Ministry of Transport approval was given for their use. TBS 13 was exhibited at the 1958 Commercial Motor Show at Earl's Court, and is seen here at the Glasgow Museum of Transport. Another Glasgow trolleybus is TB 78. New in 1958, TB 78 was one of 90 BUT 9613T trolleybuses with Crosley bodywork, which entered service between July 1957 and December 1958 to cope with the opening of 3 new trolleybus routes. The 106 from Bellahouston to Millerston or Riddery was one of them. The Glasgow trolleybus system only lasted a total of 18 years, and TB 78 was less than 10 years old when withdrawn from service following the last day of trolleybus operation on the 27th of May 1967. During its short lifetime, TB78 was the only vehicle of its class to have had 3 different liveries. And it was also based at 3 different depots throughout its lifetime: Denninston, Govan and Hampden. The East Midlands city of Derby operated trolleybuses from the 9th of January 1932 to the 9th of September 1967. Derby Corporation Omnibus Department received 237 from Charles H. Rowe in early 1960 as part of a batch of 8. These were the last of the traditional type of open platform trolleybuses ever built, with new chassis and bodies. All subsequent deliveries being either rebodies on older chassis or had front exits with doors. "237 has a 95 horsepower BHT motor, which is more than sufficient to power the 65 passengers along quietly and fume-free, a task which is still possible, as upon withdrawal she was purchased for preservation. And after restoration, now operates at the Black Country Living Museum in Dudley. Back to South Yorkshire, and Rotherham Corporation operated a sizable fleet of trolleybuses for over 50 years. And this is one of 2 identical Daimler vehicles, with smart row bodywork, preserved at the Trolleybus Museum at Sandtoft. Up until the early 1950s, the trolleybuses in Rotherham were exclusively single-deckers. From 1956, double-deck trolleybuses were phased in on certain busy routes. Rotherham's trolleybus era is also catered for with this: a Bedford OL-AZ tower wagon, with bodywork by Eagle. This tower wagon provided an easy means of access to the overhead wires. The wagon also had a workshop and a source of spares, so it could render first aid to any trolleybus that had failed in service. Into West Yorkshire, and the town of Huddersfield was a noted trolleybus user. Indeed, it had a large fleet, which included this example: 631, a Sunbeam S7 with an East Lancashire Coachworks body. It was new in 1959 and seats 72 passengers. 631 remained operational until the Huddersfield trolleybus system was abandoned in 1968. It was bought for preservation originally by the West Yorkshire Transport Circle, and following the demise of that group, 631 transferred to the British Trolleybus Society. Arguably, 631 has been Sandtoft's most reliable service trolleybus over the years, and is kept in immaculate condition. There are several museums where trolleybuses are preserved, but the home of the trolleybus in the UK is at the Trolleybus Museum at Sandtoft, just outside of the South Yorkshire town of Doncaster. The history of the centre dates back to September 1961, when the Reading Transport Society was formed, with initially 10 members, to purchase trolleybus number 113 from Reading Corporation, which became the first privately preserved trolleybus in the country. In 1969, 4 separate enthusiast groups, the Reading Transport Society, the Doncaster Omnibus and Light Railway Society, the West Riding Transport Society and the Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire Transport Society, came together to establish a working trolleybus museum on 4 derelict acres of a World War II RAF base at Sandtoft. The museum first opened its gates to the public in September 1971, when the forerunner to the present annual Sandtoft gathering was held. Construction of the trolleybus overhead wiring started in that year, and the first trolleybus operated from the powered overhead in 1973. The annual Sandtoft gathering has developed into the major event in the museum's calendar, and these shots date back to the mid-1970s. This sequence features never-before-seen footage from the Sandtoft gathering in 1998, as the 3-axle Huddersfield trolleybus we've just seen passes the camera. Several of the Bradford trolleybuses were out in service, including 834. The event is held on the last weekend in July. Many preserved buses, coaches and commercial vehicles join the event from all across the country. This is a Bradford City Leyland PD2, which is undertaking a circuit around the Sandtoft trolleybus run. Another Bradford vehicle is this tower wagon, XKW 832, numbered 032 in the Bradford fleet. It is a 1962 Austin 550 FG with a specially built tower section allowing for easy access to the overhead wiring for maintenance purposes. Derby Corporation's 172 is one of several preserved Derby trolleybuses. Moving forward to 2003's Santos Gathering, and Bradford Trolleybus 746, a 1949 BUT trolleybus, is in service. It has a body by Leeds-based manufacturer Rowe.
We shall be operating the Isle of Action tour, departing at 12 o'clock, and in a few minutes' time I'll give you a few more details about it. And that is quite definite. The Isle of Action tour will depart at 12 o'clock precisely. Thank you.
Maidstone Corporation's number 56, registration GKP 511, is next. It's a Sunbeam W chassis, again with a Rowe body. The trolleybus was new in 1944, but its original body was removed and replaced with a new Rowe example in 1960. The museum has a good selection of facilities, including a cafe and a shop. Nottingham Trolleybus 506 operated the last official trolleybus journey in the city on Friday the 1st of July 1966. By the early 1970s, all the trolleybus routes in the United Kingdom had been abandoned. But in Europe, trolleybuses were very much alive. The northern Switzerland city of Schlaffenhausen operated trams until 1966, when trolleybuses were introduced. This example, 207, is a classic modern design, a generation away from even the most modern trolleybuses Britain had in the 1970s. Air suspension, air brakes and power steering, all common on today's motor buses, are features found on European trolleybuses. So, just what would a 1980s British trolleybus have looked like if the systems had still been around? Like this. This is South Yorkshire Passenger Transport Executives, bus number 2450. The first thing people notice about this vehicle is the noise. It isn't just a trolleybus. It has a small, two-stroke diesel engine fitted in the rear to allow for small movements if the electric power overhead isn't present. This would allow this trolleybus to move out of the way of traffic, even if there's a fault in the overhead wires. 2450 was an experimental trolleybus designed in 1985 by the South Yorkshire PTE, with a view to bringing back a modern trolleybus system to the streets of Doncaster. The vehicle is an adapted version of the then standard Dennis Dominator motorbus, and in 1986 it started tests running alongside Doncaster Racecourse for a few years. Unfortunately, the privatisation of the bus industry in the late 1980s saw the idea cancelled, and 2450 is now at home at the Trolleybus Museum at Sandtoft. To finish, we can enjoy a ride at the front of a Wolverhampton trolleybus around the trolleybus route at the Black Country Living Museum.
This is the stop for the coal mine. Oh, they're all so when it goes back. Stick them back on.
Well,